Hello YouTube, this is Froogle and welcome to the first in our series of fully loaded Majestic Dash 8 Q400 flights. Now you remember the last flight I did in this was actually kind of messing around out in the tropics, and we flew to Princess Juliana from St. Bart's, which was very foolish and not very realistic. And I was due to fly now from Princess Juliana to Miami, which would have been a very long route. I had some problems with that. I'm using the current nav data, nav cycle, and I couldn't plot the route. I mean, I could plot the route in FS Build, but I couldn't actually enter it into the aircraft. So we're doing something a little bit shorter, a little bit maybe more realistic. A Q400 really wouldn't fly from Princess Juliana to Miami. It's predominantly over water and a very long flight, and that's not what these are made for. So instead, we're going to fly a Colgan Air Q400 from Pittsburgh all the way up to Newark, which is a route that they have flown or do fly. I'm not very familiar with Colgan, but I looked it up on the interwebs, and that's what I was told. Now, this is a fully loaded video, so I'm using two computers, going to do all the flight planning in this video and set up the aircraft. And right now, we're going to look at the flight planning, which is why you're looking at my notebook with a ton of data on it. I'm going to whiz you over to my main PC first of all, and here we are looking at the Q400 control panel. This is very important. This is where we enter what we're carrying in terms of people and baggages and fuel. Now, the fuel numbers in here are completely wrong right now. They're going to change, but the baggages and people are correct. So we are going to be carrying 60 passengers and about 1,200 pounds of fuel. Okay, now the way it all works out is in the Majestic Q400. You can change this figure, but each passenger, I think, weighs 187 pounds. They're a little chunky, not a flight full of supermodels. So 60 passengers at 187 pounds plus 1,200 of baggages gives us a grand total payload of 12,420 pounds. We need that number in order to plan the flight. So let's head on over to my flight planning computer here. I'm going to move the mic a little bit. Okay, the first thing we want to do is figure out the weather. I use Active Sky for my weather because it gives me a couple of very useful features. One of them is historical weather. So I'm going to set the time and day here to Monday, July 29th at 9 in the morning here, which is 1300 GMT. 4 hours difference. Always go on the GMT time, that way you know it's going to be what you expect. So we'll apply that. It's going to activate my weather and refresh. While it's doing that, you see at the top here it says 7:29 now, 0900. While it's doing that, we'll go to flight plan. I've already entered this, but I'll show you what I do. Put in departure airport as KPIT, destination airport as KWR. We're just going to go direct. So we're going to click on direct. In fact, it's not even going to let me. Cruise altitude for this flight, we're going to be cruising at 23,000 feet. Why wouldn't that let me go direct? And cruise speed, we don't really care about it. This is just to calculate the weather en route. Click on process. It will figure out what's going to happen and ask if you want to install Active Sky graphics. I don't do that. I tend to fly with Rex textures. So I'm going to say no there. And now it's giving me the wind component of the flight, which is a wind component of 6. That's going to be useful. It's also going to give me the temperature, by the way. If we go over here, KPIT temperature at 9 o'clock, at 1 o'clock GMT in Pittsburgh is there, 17 degrees. We're going to need that. So with all that, we can head on over to FS Build, which is where I typically plan my routes. I know you can go online. You can go to Route Finder. There's various other sites you can go to download routes. I tend to prefer to make mine. Now, I got a profile for the Q400 that I downloaded online. So just search with Google for Q400 FS Build. You'll find that profile. And we're going to enter some numbers in here that we need. So temperature at KPIT, we already know is 17 degrees. We'll put that in right there. Now, we're using a weight unit of pounds because we're in America. Taxi fuel, standard taxi fuel for a Q400 is, looking at my notes, 110 pounds. So we'll put that in there, 110. Reserves, we're going to get onto that in a minute. Now, hold. You typically reserve 1,800 pounds of fuel per hour of holding. Now I'm going to assume, we're not actually going to hold, but just to do everything realistically, I'm going to assume half an hour of traffic holding, half an hour of weather holding, giving us a grand total of 1,800 pounds of holding. So we'll put that in there. Extra, we'll put in an extra amount down here of 300, so we're going to be doing an instrument approach into Newark. I'm going to leave reserve empty. I think this FS Build will calculate it for me. If not, we'll just come back and put 1,000 in there. Call sign, this is Colgan Air, so CJC. I don't have a valid flight number, so I'm just going to say 1000. In fact, let's make this simple. If I was on comms, 1234. There you go, CJC 1234. Payload weight, I just told you we worked that out as 12,420 pounds. So that sets up the aircraft profile. Now you can go up to route. I've already keyed it in. I go KPIT, delete the runway, delete the SID. KEWR is our destination, delete the runway, delete the star. Our alternate is KJFK. Now you can just click on build. And I have this set up to produce a flight simulator flight plan, which I'm not going to use, but I am using Avlasoft EFB to track the flight. Anyway, having done that, let's see what it's got down here. Okay, it didn't actually factor in any reserve for me, which very, very much sucks. So we're going to go back to the aircraft here. We will put in a reserve of £1,000. In fact, let's put in £1,800 just to be safe. If we're using £1,800 for an hour of hold, let's put in a reserve of £1,800. Gives us an hour reserve on flight. Alternate, I'm surprised it didn't calculate that. We'll try once again, since we have an alternate. Build. And it has calculated alternate. There we go. So what FS Build is telling us now, by the way, when you normally create a route in FS Build, you'll get something like this. Go to the bottom, click on Navlog, and you'll get this, which is much, much more useful. So £110 of fuel to taxi, £3,101 of fuel to go to our destination, £1,800 1 hour of flight in reserve. Our alternate is going to need £677 of fuel. Holding fuel, £1,800, so that's an hour of holds, 30-minute traffic, 30-minute weather. Extra fuel, 300. We're doing an instrument approach, and typically for an instrument approach, you set aside 300 in the Q400. And then we have total required fuel, which is here, 7788. So now we can go back over to the other computer. Here we go with the magic of video editing, and we will key in those fuel figures. So our takeoff fuel here, my keyboard's very spread out. Let me just grab that. Our takeoff fuel is our total fuel from FS Build, which is 7788. Now our trip fuel, the total amount of fuel we require to reach Newark is 3101. So we go down here and we'll put in 3101. Now we can click on calculate. There we go. We are within the flight envelope for the 3 key figures, 0 fuel rate and takeoff mass and all that stuff. It's calculated everything we need. When I fire up FSX, I will click send data to flight sim and it will load our aircraft for us. A couple of numbers you need to make note of, which I'm going to do right now, because we're going to need these when we set up the aircraft. Our total 0 fuel mass. So this is the mass of the aircraft with all the people and the cargo on board without any fuel. It's 53056. So ZFM or ZFW you might be more familiar with. ZFW is, hang on, I've got my cursor over that. 53056. 53056. I will make a note right here as well of the fuel. So total fuel on board is 7788 and trip is 3101. Good. We're going to need all of those numbers when we set up the actual aircraft. 60844. That's our weight at takeoff. Our landing mass then is going to be 57,743, way underneath the maximum, as is our takeoff. We're good. So that's all done. Let's go back over to the flight planning computer again. Because I have FS Build, Export, and FSX, got so many acronyms, and FSX Flight Plan, and I'm using Avlasoft EFB, there's another acronym. I can actually load that flight plan in here, so I'm going to do that. Simply go up to route setup, however you want to phrase that. Select, choose Microsoft Flight Plan. There is the one we just created. Open it. I've created a profile in Avlasoft EFB for the Dash 8. Let's pop that open right now. 23,000 feet. There is our route. Cody via J518 to Avir, via J80 to Beat, via J230 to Larry, via J6 to Park, and then to BWZ. And then we are there. Let's activate that route. Okay, so now if we look at en route and look at arrival, you can see the route there. That's the orange line. Lots of cluttered stuff all over here. Let me turn some of these things off. Declutter this a little bit. There we go. So that's our route. Very, very easy. Not a big deal. Should be fun. Now, in terms of reading a route, let's go back to FS Build. This is the route here. You just saw it in Avlasoft DFB. That is our departure airport, K-Pit, Pittsburgh. Cody is our first waypoint. We are probably going to be looking for a SID that ends at Cody. We'll get onto that in a minute. J518 is an airway. It's an air corridor, basically. A route, a set of preset GPS points, if you like. You can think of it that way. That's how FSX deals with it. That connect this to this. So we're going from Cody via the J518 airway to LaJoy, then via the J80 airway to Larry. That's the route there. Once we get there, we're looking for a star that begins with BWZ. That would be the start of the transition into Newark. Right now, though, we're interested in this, the SID. How do we get from the airport to Cody? So go look at Active Sky once again. Weather is showing us a wind from 260 at 6 knots. Obviously, we like to take off into the wind. So departure, we click on up here, Cape at departure. We can look at a SID overview. We're actually departing to the south and the east. Let's say east. That's not good. Okay, to the south. That's not good. Oh, yes it is, pit 9. That would work actually. Pit 9 looks to be the one we're going to use, but we'll try it. So select a SID. Here's our runways. The weather is going to favor one of these two. I don't know the active runways that are in use at Pittsburgh all the time. I'm going to presume the longer one is, which will be 28 left. And we're going pit 9, done. Activate. Now we have a SID. Our standard instrument departure is all set up. I'm a little disappointed that from Pittsburgh we don't have SIDs, a lot of SIDs ending at Cody and stuff like that. I'm sure it's very different in Newark because it's much busier airspace, but we're basically going to turn off and then pretty much we're at Cody, so don't even really need to worry about a SID, but we've got it selected anyway. I'm sure people are jumping on the comments right now to tell me off. Okay, so with all that done and planned, I don't think there's anything else to plan. We figured out our payload, we figured out our fuel, we figured out our route. We've started to set up an EFB just to track it. You don't need all this stuff, by the way. This is a fully loaded video that I typically do to show you the steps that I would go through to plan a flight and some of the tools that I have here just to amuse me, really. You don't need all this stuff. You can get along just fine with just the aircraft. But with that said, let's jump into FSX and we will start setting everything up. Okay, so here we are at Pittsburgh in our Colgan -8 Q400, ready to go. I've already done the captain's originating checks. If you want to see how that's done, look at the previous 2 videos I did on the Q400. What we're going to do now, though, is really the focus of this part of the video, which is building the flight route, because it's quite unique. If you're used to Boeing aircraft, then it's almost quite eccentric in how it works. So what we're going to do, first of all, we need to go down to the FMS, which is down here. In fact, first of all, we're going to get rid of this. That gets in the way. By clicking down there, the yoke goes away. So let's go down to the FMS over here. Okay. So check everything here. So check the current date is correct. Check that the nav database is correct, which it is. 21 it expires next month, 21st of August, so we're all good there. Click on accept. Now to enter the flight plan, it's a little odd. First, we got a message, so we just accept the message. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is put in where we are. KPIT, hit enter. Now a lot of people, when they see the screen, they'll go up here and click this LSK for accept. You don't need to do that. It's quicker to just press enter again. That accepts it. Now put in the destination airport, KEWR, enter, enter. So we're all good. Now normally to enter waypoints on this route, remember our first waypoint is actually an intersection, which is Cody, Kilo Oscar Delta India Echo. You would click on the final waypoint that you have. Click on the list button, and then you would choose from these. So is it VOR, is it an NDB, is it an intersection. If we click on intersections, you would scroll down here until you see Cody. Now the strange thing is, and you'll find this quite a lot with the Q400 in FSX, a lot of the intersections are missing. That doesn't mean they're not there, it just means they're not listed. The way we get around that is to actually go back to the flight plan, click on the last waypoint. We need to insert a waypoint before this, so we click on list and gap. That puts a gap in our flight plan, which we can now click on and then just type straight over it. So KODIE, enter, enter, and we're all good. Now we have a gap there. We can get rid of that gap by hitting delete twice. Now that we have the Cody waypoint in, we can put in the rest of the route. You remember that on our flight plan, after Cody, we're following an airway, which is J518, down to LaJoy. So click on the last waypoint once again. Click on list. Click on airway. Now choose the airway that you're going to use. So it's number 2. Type in 2. Enter, and we're going down to LaJoy, which is number 5. So 5, enter, and we're all set. There's our waypoints. After LaJoy, we're following Juliet 80 up to Larry. So again, last waypoint, list, airways, Juliet 80 is 4, Larry is 7, there it is right there. Once again, click on the last one. After Larry, we're going from Juliet 230 to Sammy, or Sammy. So list, airway, Juliet 230 is number 2, Sammy is number 4, enter. Choose that last waypoint once again. From Sammy, we're going Juliet 6 to Bravo Whiskey Zulu, which is our last waypoint. So list, airway, Juliet 6, number 2, down to Bravo Whiskey Zulu, which is number 9, enter, done. Our waypoints and our flight route and everything are all set up now. We have decided to take off on a different runway to the one I just discussed. We're actually going to take runway 28 right. So we will go ahead now and set up that departure. And you'll see some interesting stuff here. Click on menu. You've got departure and arrival. So we're going to choose departure. We're taking runway 28 right, which is number 7. So put in number 7, enter. Now it's saying select the SID. We have the pit 9 SID, number 1, enter. And then click on flight plan. If we scroll back up to the top now, you'll see something very interesting. There's our departure airport. There is the first and second waypoints of our SID. Notice there it says manual. Notice there it says no link. In a Boeing 737, that would be a route disconnect, flight plan disconnect, or a disco. And we would delete it. That's not actually the case in the Dash 8, and actually wouldn't often be the case in the 737, I think, in real life, I think. What we're expecting here, or what the aircraft is expecting, is that after takeoff we'll be talking to air traffic control and they will route us. They will tell us that we can fly direct to whichever waypoint makes sense in our flight plan. So we're going to leave that exactly as it is. We're going to depart K-Pit on a heading of 280. Above 1700 feet, we're actually going to go direct to Cody. We'll set that up later on. Okay, next thing we need to do is set up our fuel and our weight. So click on fuel. Now click on menu. You'll notice here that you can change how fuel is entered. This part on the left is a calculator. If you put in a number of pounds here, it will convert it to kilograms, and so on and so on and so on. You can also change how the fuel is entered. We calculated our fuel as a single number, so not by tank but by aircraft. So click on that. We're going to choose number 2, option number 2, by total. Number 2, enter, return. So now we can go ahead and enter our fuel and our weights and all that good stuff that we noted previously. Let me just refer to my notes here. So our zero fuel weight is 53056. So click here, 53056, and enter. Now our total fuel on board is 7788. So let's click on here first, 7788. Enter. It's now given us a gross weight of 60843. The number that we had from the Majestic weights and load balancer thing was 60844. The APU is currently on. That's why it's 1 pound less. Everything is pretty damn perfect at that point. At this point we can click on performance if we wanted to, and we can see everything that it knows about our route here. We are going to KEWR. We have this much weight on board, this much fuel on board, and so on and so on. It's pretty cool. We can go back to the fuel page, fuel page here, and click on next and view information here about at departure, number of pounds of fuel we've used currently, number of pounds of fuel we're currently carrying, and so on and so on. Once we actually get moving, it will calculate estimated fuel at arrival point. Okay, let's finish setting up this aircraft and then we'll run through the first officer originating checks. The next thing we need to do is actually figure out our V speeds. It's very easy to do, but it's a little daunting because you have to refer to the speed performance chart. So back over on the other computer, let's bring up those charts right here. Now we know that our takeoff weight is 60844. You just saw that. So that's halfway between obviously 57 and 62. Now it's saying for a flaps 5 takeoff, which is what we're going to do, our V rotate speed here, our V1 speed is 124 to 130. There's 6 difference there, so we'll take the difference, so it's 127 we're going to be using. And VR and V2 then are 127 plus 3, so 130. So we have 127 for V rotate, for V1, and then rotate and V2 are 130. We'll go ahead back to the cockpit now and we'll set those in. Click on Speedbug Select. There's your V1. Rotate that up. So we want 127 for V1. Like so. Click on Select once again. Rotate, we've said, is 130. Now in Majestic's Dash 8 Q400, rotate and V2 are exactly the same. So 130 here. Now we want our V-fry, which is our flap reduction initiation speed. So looking back on the other computer, looking at our V-fry and V-climb here, between 57 and 62, again, there's about 5 or 6 difference between those two, so we'd say 3 difference. So V-fry on flaps 5 is 140, and V-climb is 151. So back in the cockpit then, let's choose the next one. There's our V-fry. So this is going to be 140. like so, and our V climb is going to be 151. Whoops. You got to be quick, otherwise it jumps back like that. There we go, 151. So all of our V speeds are now set. Let's go up here and set up the FMS here. So we're going to make sure that nav source is on nav. Notice it's all blue text down here, which means it's following VORs. So rotate this left until it turns magenta and says FMS. Now we're going to arm this already. We're not going to obviously turn the autopilot on, but we will arm this. So we're going to do indicated airspeed hold for our climb. We're going to climb at 185 knots. Okay, so the way we do that is we click on IIS, indicated airspeed hold, and then start rolling the wheel. So the indicated airspeed, you can see it rolling up now. We want it at 185. That's going to be our climb speed. And today's flight, we're not expecting any constraints. We need to be above 1700 at the first waypoint, but that's fine. So today's flight is going to be cruising at 23,000, flight level 230. So we'll just roll the altitude up here. 23,000, alt select. And you'll notice back down here on the FMS that it actually says for our first waypoint heading 280. So we'll do all of that as well. So we'll just click on over here, heading select. And we'll tune that heading round to 280. You can see the heading bottom left on the PFD. There. So now we're all set. So heading of 280, climbing up to flight level 230, climb speed or an indicated airspeed hold of 185. Alt select is already armed. We're good to go. The FMS is all set up. The auto flight system is all set up. Now we can carry on with the first officer originating checks and get this aircraft ready to go. So as I mentioned, I think in a previous video, I actually did a full set of flows and checklists for this aircraft. So here we are. Let's pop this down. Let's go to first officer originating checks. Here they are. And I'll start working through these one by one back in the cockpit. So first up, ATIS cockpit. I actually already done that. The pressure is 3011. I've set it here. I've set it here. It's automatically over on the other one as well. Oxygen mask we're not going to worry about. Circuit breakers we're not going to worry about because it's a simulator. First officer side panel. We need to check that that is all in good order. Nothing is out of place there. Yep, everything is good there. Anti-skid switch, that needs to be tested and then on. So we'll flick that up to test. There's the chime. Make sure the appropriate light is on up there. And then put it back to on. So that's all set. EGPWS, that is this top button. If you click and hold it, it will run the full test, which takes quite a while. Just click it briefly and it will run a short test.
Glide slope. Pull up. Terrain. Terrain. Pull up.
So that's all done. That all worked out just fine. So flight instruments, are they set? Well, yes, we've set the QNH. Both sides concur with each other. We're all good. Except over here, nav source is wrong, so we'll adjust that. There we go. Let's put that down onto FMS1 as well. Good. Center pedestal, everything is on. Everything is powered up, so we're all good there. AHRS is all good as well. And ARCDU, radios and radar needs to be on. Radios need to be set. And the radar needs to be tested. So we'll go ahead and do that now. I'm going to flick this display up here onto nav, like so, and then we'll press weather radar, like so, and then we'll put the radar into test, like so. Should start seeing some pretty colors being drawn. There it goes. So that's good. We'll just let that test run. So the first officer originating flows are done. So what's next? The checklist for aircraft being powered up. So, circuit breakers. They are checked. Landing gear is down. 3 green lights. Radar now needs to be off. If that test completed just fine, which it did. That is off. Battery master, main, aux and standby switches up there are all set on. Exterior lights as required. The only exterior light we have right now is the position light because the aircraft is powered. Flight deck displays are all on. Standby and PTU pumps, these 2 buttons down here are both off. Parking brake is set. External power APU is on. FMS has been initialized. Aircraft power up checklist complete. So the next checklist that we have then is actually the before start checklist. So external power, APU and voltage, the way we bring that up, it's actually on this display over here. We'll switch this back over to systems, and then we can simply fly over here, make sure the voltages are all showing correct numbers, which they are. So on, checked and noted. Circuit breakers checked, escape hatch is closed, we're all good there. Flight guidance control panel, we've just set that up. Fuel quantity, onboard and required is checked. We've already done that. It's all handled for us by the load manager. Hydraulic number 3 pressure, slightly up. That's good. Condition levers should be in fuel cutoff, which they are. Emergency lights should be armed. Actually, I think I missed those in my haste to get this video underway. There we go. They are armed. Fasten seatbelt switches on. Departure briefing. Well, we're taking runway 28 right, climbing up at a speed of 185 to flight level 230, maintaining heading of 280 after takeoff until directed otherwise. That's our takeoff briefing. So, before start checklist complete. Let's move to the next flow or checklist now, which is the starting engine flow. We need to check that the doors are closed. Again, very simple to do. We're looking at the systems page already, so now we will press door systems. You can see 3 green and 3 green. Doors are all closed. Battery master, main aux and standby switches should be on, which they are. Beacon now should be on. We'll flick that to red because we're about to start up. APU bleed air is off. And engine number 2, check it's clear. That leads us directly into the before starting checklist, which is pretty much the same thing. Or the starting engine checklist. So, battery switches and power switches are all good and are on. Doors are closed. Beacon light is on. APU bleed is off. Engines are clear. Starting engine checklist complete. Now we can request pushback and start, which is what we will do. So I'm using GSX here. GSX has a little bit of a quirk with the Dash 8 Q400 from Majestic, in that you don't start the engines until you finish pushing back. So I'm just going to request it. Going to request pushback, and I'm going to push back to the left. Here we go.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Departure check completed. Live has been inserted. Release parking brakes.
Alright, so release the brakes.
Commencing push. All engines clear.
As I said, we're not going to start until push is complete, so there's nothing to do here but to sit back and watch. The cool thing with GSX is it will follow the taxi line, so I said push back to the left. It's going to follow that yellow taxi line all the way up and then around here, and we will be perfectly lined up on that line, ready to go. He's getting ready to start his turn now. Nice skid mark from the wheels because the wheels aren't turned. Okay, let's get ready to start up. So, very, very simple. I'm going to flick these two switches onto normal. Choose engine number 2 by right-clicking here. And get ready to start. Set the parking brake. There it goes. We have a caution light up because parking brake is now set. And we will go ahead and start these engines. So, all we need to do is click that starter button. As the numbers come up here, we moved the condition lever for engine number 2 up to start and feather. And watch for it to stabilize. Here it comes. Whoops, a little bit too much. There we go. Bit of a problem moving that with a mouse.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass main removed.
Up come the engines now. That click you heard is the starter disengaging. Notice the switch has come back to the middle. Let's choose the starter for number 1 now. Hopefully I can move the condition lever with a bit more precision this time.
Right is clear.
Engine's nice and stabilized now, so we will start number 1. Watch for the numbers to rise. It's doing it again. There we go. Wait for that to stabilize, and then we will run the captain's after starting flow. So, condition levers now to max. You'll hear the engines really spool up now. APU can go off at this point. Normally you'd wait 60 seconds now before clicking this button. In the sim it doesn't matter too much. Main bus tie should go off. There. Ice protection as required. We don't need ice protection today. Rudder travel. Check the travel. We have indicators down here showing us everything. So full left, full right. That's all good. Nose wheel steering now needs to go on. Ready for our taxi. Radar needs to go to standby. Like so. MFDs need to be set to nav. They are both on FMS1. FMS1, we are okay to go. Let's quickly run through the first officer after start checklist, or flow I should say. So he's responsible for managing the engines. So auto feather now needs to be selected on. We need to choose our takeoff power. We're not going to press anything, we're using default. Tank auxiliary pumps need to both be on. Standby and PTU pumps need to be on. Hydraulic number 3 and elevator all checked. De-ice pressure checked. And bleed air as required. We're going to switch that up onto normal. And we are going to turn on the pitot heats. Like so. There's only one light left up here now, which is the parking brake. We will turn that off in the next video. This one was all about flight planning and setting up the aircraft. In the next video, we'll be following the SID, taking off from Pittsburgh, managing the climb, and heading towards Newark. As always, my name is Froogle. If you have not checked it out already, I strongly urge you to check out facebook.com/FroogleSim, where you get behind the scenes information on these videos and the opportunity to chat with me. Thanks for watching. See you soon.